Basically, the class is a Alliance class, so they're 9 to 11, and they're the lowest level, so they're like beginners, elementary. So it's a task which has got not a lot of materials, and it's got a lot of support. So I thought it'd be a good one to show you. So it's writing a film review. So it starts off with looking at different kinds of films. So trying to elicit some different kinds of films, like different genres. So you've got science fiction, comedy, see if they can come up with stuff like that, see in the films. And then when you've got the genres, then you can get them to, in their groups, on these boards, just to group, see if they know the film and another one. So they've got some kind of reference, they've got the title of the film and a name of a film, so you can check their understanding. Okay, then just to give them a bit of speaking practice. So you've got some, you can do this, so obviously with the question, you can drill the question, do some pronunciation. And then, just so you've got, because they're such a low level, they do need this level of support, so you can do, you can teach that, do some intonation with the really sounding interested. You can do like a substitution drill, so you bring the students up to the class, you start off saying the question, the student answers, and then you substitute yourself for another student, and then they just continue that way, so they get the idea of the conversation, the idea of the intonation, and then once you've got that in place, then you let them do a mill drill and they walk around. So there's just lots of support, lots of sort of consolidation of the language. Okay, this is just a way to get some feedback. So you get them all to stand up, they have to tell you one piece of information about their classmate, it has to be grammatically correct. When it's correct, they can sit down. So there's motivation because they're dying to sit down, and then you can also they'll be thinking more, and you can do some accuracy work that way. So I've named that sit down accuracy practice. That's quite original. I think it tells you what it does. Okay. Right. Then you're going to tell them about your favourite film. And they're going to answer these questions. So these are the questions these questions are going to be repeated throughout the next few stages. So they'll be using them again and again. So first of all, they're listening to your anecdote, which is going to be the model, and they're going to do some comprehension questions. Okay, then once you checked the questions, you just get them to choose one of the films. Obviously, they're going to be choosing the films that they like from their boards, just in pairs, just see if they can use those questions with a bit of support, just to talk about their favourite films. Okay.
Have they written these titles in Spanish, perhaps?
No, that's what you monitor and you support. You can.
Okay, translate it.
Yeah, you can help them out that way. Then you do a bit of feedback. What did they talk about? And then you can just recap about your anecdote, because that's what you're going to need that for the next section. So this is the script of the anecdote, which is the language that you want them to use. So you can go through the scripts and you can highlight the chunks of language that you think will be useful for them to use. Okay, so you can highlight the bits you want them to use, and then because then you can just delete the rest of it. You just leave them with that scaffold. They can just fill it out about their favourite film, that's the final task. Is to write the film review. So you're just constantly using the similar questions, similar vocabulary throughout, and you consolidate and recycling it, and you'll end up with a film review using the language that you use from your anecdote. Okay, so. You just change the pictures. It's the same theory. I mean, you just might not do that standard sit down.
Well, you're familiar with this book?
Yeah.
Which one's this?
No.
New English Farm Advanced, but as you can guess, things here, the input is good, the material is good when you do listening. The texts I think are fantastic, they're really natural, but what it lacks is this move from an activity to the task. So again, it's very nice, the input is fantastic, and this book in particular is very authentic. So the texts here are really not adapted, they just put them in, most of them, and they do language activities in them. So as much as I'm happy with the material, I'm not really happy with the way the activities work. Again, it's a string of activities, 1, activity, another one which is loosely connected to the previous one, which is fine, but again, talking about task-based learning, we need kind of a goal and a challenge for them to do the task and do it again. So I chose an activity which would require minimum preparation to turn it into a task, just to show you how easily it can be supplemented. Okay? And I chose this one. It's basically a recording of a tour guide talking about a visit to the gallery. So I'll give you time to have a look at it. It is quite nice in the book. It's quite a nice reproduction of the family of the Goya painting, the family of Carlos IV. As you can see, the activities here, first one is some prediction, then they do the listening task, then there are comprehension questions, and they draw a little diagram. So there is an element of a task, they need to produce something, but it only starts at the very end. So task here becomes part of a string of activities, where really what you want is to twist it so that they do the task again and they're challenged all the way through. So the way I approached it is I said that imagine that you have a friend who works as a tour guide in the British Museum, and he got sick and he desperately needs cover on a Saturday afternoon. So you were called at a very short notice to go into the gallery and stand in for him. But you're not qualified as a guide. So before they listened to the real guide on the recording, they had to basically improvise and pretend they're tour guides. So they did it pretty well. They bluffed their way through. And the question asked next is, what's missing? Well, we don't know much about the painting. So they listened to the recording of a professional guide talking about this painting, and they collected facts about the family, so they did this listening task. Then next there was a language element in the task where they needed to go back and look at the transcript. And as you can imagine, at the back of the book, the transcript will be full of language useful for guides talking about paintings. So they needed to look through the transcript, analyze it, and fish out that language which they think would fit any task describing a painting. So they wrote it in their notebooks. And we did a little bit of pronunciation focusing on linking and sentence stress. Then they did the task again. But this time I projected it like this. They had to get off their seats, come to the board, and it was it was the same task, but because physically they were not sitting at the desk, they were standing in front of a painting as they would in a museum, it required minimum preparation in terms of ICT, but that projection and standing in front of it and having the group of the classmates listening, that created a situation where they really needed to try, and they got into that role. So this task was a combination of a role play and doing the task again, having looked at linguistic resources and the vocabulary necessary for this task. So again, it didn't take me long to prepare this. I didn't need to redesign the activities themselves. It's the approach at doing this thing again and the challenge. And they felt, you could see that they did quite well in a second. They were really, really pleased with themselves. They've done the task again and they've done it better. They've got the language, they've got the facts. So it was quite nice little cycle, yes.
Can I just ask, if you've got a large class, how would you manage having them all coming to the board? Surely only one person could do it. They couldn't all do the same presentation.
They did all the same presentation.
And it was a big class.
Yeah. So we had 4 here, 4 standing there, 4, like in a museum. If it's busy and it's full, you don't really need to approach. That wasn't big enough. I zoomed in a bit that was big enough for them to show, to point to people, but because they've seen it as well, they didn't have to peer into it and make out faces and things. Yeah.
Did
So,
they
yeah.
didn't the rest of the 15 students get a bit bored of listening to the same thing?
It was 4 groups, 16 students. There are 4 groups of 4 doing it.
Oh, okay. So just listen
At
to
the
3
same
of
time,
us.
simultaneously.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So it wasn't one student talking to the whole class. No. It was 4 students in 4 groups being tour guides. And to share it evenly, I asked them to, halfway through, to change roles. And the person who started had to stop, and another person had to continue where the other one stopped. So it did encourage them to become more kind of active listeners in that. And at the same time, the beauty of this task is that those who preferred to listen could be the listeners, and those who wanted to talk could be the tour guides. So that's what I find task-based learning gives, this flexibility where students can pick and choose what skill they want to do. I mean, there was even one student who said he's going to write about a different painting. He is an artist and he was studying icons, I think Greek icons he was doing in his college. So he chose one of the tasks at home as an extension, he chose to write. Using that language he fished out from the listening to write about one of the icons he saw as part of his course. Okay, so that's I think that flexibility when you approach the material and tweak the activities to make them more engaging for students, this creates a situation where they can pick and choose how they want to do it, but the outcome is the same. So even those who listen, they still participate in the task. There were standing, there were listeners, there were tourists, so that went quite well.